essentially, and I think he quite enjoys those time. The shorter the time gets, he enjoys it more. So, okay, we're off to a quick start. Lots of moves very early on. This is what we call the Catalan opening. It's very dynamic, potentially, but it also has a lot of strategic basis for White. White has 2 pawns, putting pressure in the center of the board. Black did jump out with a bishop check. 2 bishops now, dark square bishops looking at each other. Black retreating, not wanting that trade. The trade would have allowed White's pieces to spring forward. And now, White's queen, just defending some pawns. This is solid stuff. It's a bit passive for Magnus Carlsen. Black has a bit of a triangle formation in the center of the board with his pawns, but no pawn breaks. White has a bit more space, and I'm not a big fan of this from Black, usually. However, they have played this opening against each other in the tournament, and Magnus does quite enjoy the solidity of the position. It's going to be very hard. White needs to work hard to crack open the middle of the board.
Yeah, I have to say Magnus absolutely thrives in these very solid, tense positions. I certainly have him as a role model in these type of formation. Just look at Black's pawn structure, the triangle. It's very, very flexible, and some moves. So we've seen some trade of pawns, and basically the action is going to happen along the C line.
Yeah, we have seen one line open up. That C line, as Ivanka mentioned, White's queen and rook were occupying it, but there were no real productive entry points. You could have maybe brought the white queen in, but she would have got kicked away or traded off. So White decides, okay, let's bring the knight out. That it does block the C line, however. That does make the white queen and white rook behind that knight very, very unhappy.
Kind of gritty, and it looks ugly, but still, it's very satisfying because Black is just simply reacting to a lot of White's plans, and it's all about the counter-attack and just provoking White to come forward to perhaps make some inaccurate moves. And Ding has just put another pawn on dark squares in a very nice geometric pattern there.
Yeah, and also maybe a secondary idea behind that last white move. White's bishop, if you look at the white bishop in front of his king, the light square bishop, maybe at the moment it's a bit blocked in, so you can slide it back to a diagonal that has just been opened up by that last pawn push. So a few 2 or 3 deep ideas there from Ding. We'll see if it's justified, or maybe if it's just too slow, that last pawn push. Magnus seizing again the opportunity to improve a piece. He continues to do this. Last game as well, lots of pieces on the board, slowly improving on each turn. Now the black queen moving out the way, the black rooks have been connected. Black's rooks are ready to swing across to that C line.
And there you see it, your bishop move is in operation, but Magnus very, very quickly responds with rook moving to an open line.
Yeah, potentially a big threat as well. White's knight was pinned there on the C line because the queen stood behind it, so Black was threatening to push a pawn and kick away that white knight. White's queen just feeling too uncomfortable where she stood. She's had to retreat back to where she came from, back to her starting square. Feels like Ding struggling to make any progress in this game. Magnus has improved his pieces over the last few turns. White really hasn't.
Yeah.
And there Magnus just gaining some space. Note how Black has now created one hiding place for his king later on. No more back rank checkmates because both kings have some breathing space.
But this actually did provoke an answer from Ding, where he's actually pushed his pawn 2 squares forward. So maybe he was slightly worried that maybe at the right time Magnus would potentially push forward. But okay, we do have action on the left side of the board. That was a little bit of a distraction there on the right. So pushing this pawn forward, I didn't really expect that, but it does make sense. Suddenly Black's passive light squared bishop, it's not passive anymore.
It's about to trade off for White's very strong light squared bishop. So the light squared bishop's about to disappear from the board. First though, White has to decide what to do with his knight. Do you trade a set of pawns first, or do you move that white knight up maybe to the edge of the board to attack the black queen? He does that. The black queen now is forced to retreat. She does step back, still keeping an eye on her light squared bishop, protecting that. Magnus, he knows a draw is enough. He's offering to trade rooks on the open line now on that C line. He's offering to trade a set of pawns and bishops. He's making his life easier.
We have another trade, David. Pawn takes pawn, and now Black is a little bit spoiled for choice. I mean, it's tempting. Bishop takes bishop. It's all happening here. So I'm just thinking, is there some tactical issues if you put your king on that square?
Yeah, the king suddenly, that's very brave, right?
Yeah.
That king is on an open diagonal. It could get checked at any moment by the black queen.
I mean, I'm just looking at rook takes rook is an immediate, it looks good because you actually can't capture with a rook because of the queen stepping forward 2 squares and giving check.
Yeah, and the
Oh,
white
but
king,
now
yeah.
bishop takes pawn. I mean, I really like what's happened in this game. It just seems like Magnus has total control of the open lines, and this is why I like this opening so much.
Yeah, I still don't think White's in any huge trouble with the evaluation bar slightly preferring Black. White does, however, have the issue of needing to win, and he's running out of pieces with which to do that. Black at any moment now can trade the remaining set of rooks. All the pieces are disappearing from the board. If you actually look at White's dark squared bishop, it's hitting thin air, and it actually doesn't have too many squares to go to. So that bishop could be a real problem piece later on. Magnus first jumping into the center with his knight. Everything's perfect here for Black. Everything's protected as well. The knights protected each other. The Black rook, bishop, all on fantastic squares.
And just look at White's pieces. Got no purpose. And okay, so the queen lines itself up with the rook. So this may or may not force a trade. I think I would just grab that rook in an instant, unless there's something else. Okay, so Magnus plays it. And again, when you keep having those trades, that just makes the task of winning for Liren very difficult.
Yeah, and I mentioned actually White's dark square bishop. White's knight on the side of the board as well. On the left side, was trapped pretty much. Knight on the Armageddon, and that's not a good knight for Liren. That last move by Magnus, slightly confusing at first. I thought maybe that would allow White's queen into the position, but then I think the Black queen intends to counterattack.
But you know what I really expected in the position? You see that lovely knight in the center? It's looking at a pawn. And so the move that I really wanted to play was actually to move my knight. Oh, God, I'm so like predictable. And then
Very direct.
And then move it to the edge to kind of gang up on that pawn.
Yeah, so Black maybe now going to improve his remaining knight. White, the Black knight in the center, perfect. The other Black knight at the top of the board, not doing too much.
Okay.
And your idea is still relevant, potentially.
I mean, are we going to see something like that?
That would be Magnus' style to improve every single piece. We saw it in the last game. He guided into victory.
But I mean, it asks a question as well, because White's done some. White's pawn structure looks great, except the light square is a little bit vulnerable, and especially the G4 square is a potential outpost. Oh! I got my move in, sorry. Playing Blitz, Magnus has got less than a minute on the clock. He needs to take care of his king. That's always the primary concern. I mean, are there any potential issues with, okay, so Magnus drops the bishop back. So he does the same job, but the queen is no longer allowed in. But okay, the bishop was quite nicely placed there. But okay.
Yeah.
White maneuvering the knight, and suddenly we see a bishop trade.
Bishop trade, and now White has achieved one of my favorite pawn structures in Blitz chess. That pawn structure for White now on the right side of the board, it looks a bit ugly, some double pawns as well, but having more pawns in front of your king is helpful long term when you're defending. So Magnus now spotting nothing better than to retreat his knight to the center of the board, and White saying, okay, you've retreated, I'm going to step forward. White's knight entering the middle as well. This one still chances for Ding. His position has actually improved quite significantly over the last 5-10 moves. And look at the clock times as well. Huge advantage for Ding on the clock. 2 minutes 18 against 30, just over 30 seconds for Magnus. Black's knight jumping towards the center now, just replacing the knight that was there previously. Somehow it does feel like Magnus maybe just allowing a bit too much activity for White. White's knight on the side of the board, ready soon to jump back into the action. And
I'm not too concerned though, because every time the White queen tries to step forward and tries to do something, then the White king has to be looked after. It's going to be vulnerable.
The question is what Black's plan is, because he hasn't been improving his position too much over the last few moves, just moving back and forth, and White there, Ding just pushing a pawn, getting ready for any potential attacks on that side. And now, okay, Black's plan was to go after White's central pawn. White does have an isolated pawn in the middle of the board on that D line, and Black's knight attacking at it, looking at it right now. So questions for Ding. Yeah.
So the big issue now here is, can the White queen be bold and be very brave and head up the board, or is there going to be a problem with the White king?
That's the question, Ivanka. So the key move right now, the critical move, the acid test of Magnus Carlsen's play is to bring the White queen in.
Okay,
He's done it.
See it.
White has a huge threat. That White queen is threatening to swing across and go and capture a pawn on that 7th rank.
And Magnus goes on the counter-attack. Wow, okay, so the queens and knights are lining together, but there's nothing more.
Ding shook his head because he realizes he only has a draw.
Under attack, can he get away with that?
maybe he'll have to try it. A draw's the same as a loss, right?
Right.
So white's knight in the middle of the board, it can actually retreat to defend. Black is he does it.
He does
Black
it.
was threatening a
I don't
pawn
think
next
it
to the
works,
white king.
actually. I think there might even be some sacrifices in the air.
Yeah.
And the knight can jump forward and give us a check. Okay, so knight takes pawn.
So Ding here can still maybe make a draw if he just gives checks with the white queen back and forth, back and forth. But look at this, the evaluation bar confirming it. That's the best white can get. A draw is not good enough. If white's knight captures the black knight, if it retreats, then the other black knight will jump in with a check, and that's deadly. It will lead to checkmate.
And just take a look in the camera at Ding. That is the definition of someone who has lost all hope.
Yeah, and we do see him give a check and another check. Will we see him take the draw?
Yeah, I think we're going to see that.
Yeah.
I mean, just nothing to do. And he's completely resigned to the inevitable.
Yeah, he's facing a deadly attack on his own, and therefore he has to force the draw. One more check now with the queen. Position repeats itself 3 times. Magnus wins this third place match.
Yeah, it's over. Magnus winning the first Blitz game. This one is a draw, so he is the winner of the third place match. Liren fighting hard, won 3 games in the Rapid today, but it is a 4th place.